Well, evening everybody, and welcome to what is the 13th week here on PubQuiz 60, so hopefully it's not too unlucky for anybody as we move into the 13th week. But I think if we all know the rules, then we'll just get on with the quiz. It usually lasts about an hour, so I think we'll just go straight into the quiz proper. As I say, here's the rules here. So it's all done on pen and paper, 5 rounds of 10 questions, 12 points per round, so a total of 60 points for the whole round. We'll do 3 rounds and then we'll have a little break after we've marked those, get an idea of the score at the halfway stage, and then we'll come back and then do the final 2 rounds. Now I'll just switch off the live chat now just for the duration of the quiz, but I will put that on during the 5-minute break in the middle and at the end for any of you to pop any of your comments on. They're always welcome to get an idea of what your favourite questions were, who's doing well on the scores, etc, etc. But I think without further ado, to speed things along, let's just get straight on to round 1. And round 1 this week is geography. And the first question in the geography round is: which US city is the home of the Motown Record Company? Which US city is the home of the Motown Record Company? Now we'll go through the questions quite quickly just to try and keep to speed, but at the end of each round there is a minute's thinking time as well to go back and finalise any answers you're unsure of, just to make sure you don't leave any blanks, etc. But we'll move on to question 2. Question 2. Which European city was called Christiania from 1624 to 1924? Which European city was called Christiania from 1624 to 1924? So if you're unsure of any of the answers at any time, just write a little note on the side. You can always come back to them in that minute's thinking time at the end. Moving on to question 3 in the geography round. Robert Mugabe was the first Prime Minister of which independent African country? Robert Mugabe was the first Prime Minister of which independent African country? And straight on to question 4. In geography, on the bank of which river does the Portuguese capital of Lisbon stand? On the bank of which river does the Portuguese capital of Lisbon stand? Now we move on to question 5. Captain Cook discovered which island in the Pacific in 1777? Captain Cook discovered which island in the Pacific in 1777? Now, in each round as well, some of you might be familiar with this, having played other weeks, but there is a bonus question, which is worth 2 points in each round, and it always comes after question 5, and it's in some way related to question 5. So the bonus question for this round in geography is: which country is this island an external territory of? Which country is this island an external territory of? And that's the island we refer to in question 5. So related to that, which country is this island an external territory of? And it's worth remembering when it comes to marking 2 points for the bonus questions, just single points for all the other ones, so 12 points available in each round. Coming back to the single point questions though again, question 6 for 1 point. Which South Asian country has a national holiday on May the 28th each year in order to celebrate its first nuclear test? Which South Asian country has a national holiday on May the 28th each year to celebrate its first nuclear test? Back to single points for these questions. And moving on, trying to get to good speed. As I say, the quiz takes about an hour, all in, with all the breaks and everything, so hopefully not too long. But question 7 in geography. Angel Falls, the world's highest waterfall, is located in which country? Angel Falls, the world's highest waterfall, is located in which country? Moving on, question 8. What is the only country in the world with an AK-47 assault rifle depicted on its national flag? What is the only country in the world with an AK-47 assault rifle depicted on its national flag? Just 2 questions to go in this first round, and at the end of the round, remember, we have a minute's thinking time just to finalise any answers, and that's the same for all rounds. But going on to question 9 in geography, and it is, which 3 colours are found on the Hungarian flag? Which 3 colours are found on the Hungarian flag? And that brings us to the last question in round 1, geography, question 10, and it is, name the 2 US states named after King Charles I. Name the 2 US states named after King Charles I. And it's both states for a point, no half points, so both states needed for the point. So that brings us nice and quickly to the end of round 1, the end of the geography round. But as I say, there's now a minute to finalise any answers you're unsure of, to make sure you fill in any blanks that you've left. So we'll put a minute on the clock now and then come back for round 2 after that. But a minute on the clock, starting now. Okay, so that's that minute's thinking time over. Goes quite quick, but hopefully even enough time just to make sure you've got an answer in for every question in that first round, geography. So we'll move on now to round two. And round two this week is music. And straight into question one. Question one in music is, who had albums entitled Complete Madness and Divine Madness? And again, at the end of this round, there will be a minute's thinking time, so anything you're not sure of, just write a note on the side of your paper. You can always come back to it later. So we'll go on to question two in the music round, and it is, who was backed by the group The Blockheads? Who was backed by the group The Blockheads? And that takes us on. Question three in music, and it is, Penny Ford and Turbo B were vocalists with which 90s Eurodance group? Penny Ford and Turbo B were vocalists with which 90s Eurodance group? Moving on quite quickly now. Question four in music. Which talent show judge managed Westlife? Which talent show judge managed Westlife? And now we come to question five. A single point for question five, but there will be a bonus question related to it. But for the single point, which song has been a number one for Tommy Rowe and for Vic Reeves? Which song has been a number one for Tommy Rowe and for Vic Reeves? And following this, we go on to the bonus question for the music round, which is in some way related to that answer there. And the bonus question, 2 points again when it comes to marking. Vic Reeves' 1991 version was recorded with which band? Vic Reeves' 1991 version was recorded with which band? So the song answer we had in question five for 1 point. Which band did Vic Reeves record that with for 2 points? And back to the single point questions again. Question six in the music round for 1 point. Which country's jury memorably voted nil point to the Swedish entry, which happened to win the competition and later go on to be a massive act worldwide in 1974? Which country's jury voted 0-1 to the Swedish entry in 1974 in the Eurovision? So 1 point for these questions after the bonus round. And moving on to question 7, again for 1 point. Which English sir has had number ones in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s? Which English sir has had number ones in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s? Three questions to go in the music round. Question 8 in music is: which Meatloaf album from 1977 was reissued in 1991 and led to a 1993 sequel? Which Meatloaf album from 1977 was reissued in 1991 and led to a 1993 sequel? Just 2 questions to go in the music round before we have a minute's thinking time again. So we'll move on to question 9. And that is, which band shares its name with a form for the unemployed? Which band shares its name with a form for the unemployed? So, one more question to go in the second round. Question 10 in music is: which instrument did jazz legend Charlie Bird Parker play? Which instrument did jazz legend Charlie Bird Parker play? So again, that brings us to the end of the round, round 2 music. Once again, we'll have a minute now on the clock just to finalise any answers you're unsure of or any notes you may have made as you've gone along. And then after that, we'll come back and do round 3. And after round 3, we'll do some initial marking of those first 3 rounds just to get an idea of the score before we have a break. But in the short term, we'll have a minute on the clock now just to finalise answers for the music round. A minute on the clock. Okay, so again, another minute's thinking time gone there. Hopefully enough time for you to get some final answers in that music round. But now we'll move on to round 3. Round 3 is a picture round, and this week it's road signs. After the success of the chocolate round last week, I've gone for road signs. Simply 10 questions, and all you have to do is name what the road sign is, all UK road signs, and what they're listed as in the highway code. Now, in this, I'll obviously allow a little bit of leniency if it's not the exact wording or the exact spelling or anything like that. So it's up to your judgment on the marking whether or not you've got it right or not. But if you're close enough, then that's usually good enough. But it'll all make sense as we go along. 10 road signs and a bonus question as well in the middle. So let's start with road sign number 1. Simply name what that road sign is. Now again, there is a minute's thinking time at the end of this round, but I won't be putting the pictures up again. So if you're unsure of any of these or haven't got a definitive answer, then either take a picture on your phone or a screen grab on your laptop or something, so you can come back to that in the minute's thinking time at the end if there's any that you're still unsure of. Like I say, we'll only be going through them once and only showing them once, so if you're unsure, do take a picture and then use that as a reference to go back to. So that's question 1. Which road sign's that? And then question 2, simple question again, what's that road sign? Moving along, trying to keep the pace up so we don't go beyond the hour, hopefully. So question 3 in road signs. Simple question again, what road sign is that? Moving on, question 4. Again, one simple question, simply name the road sign. Now, question 5. Once again, simply name that road sign. Now, in this round, there is a bonus question, but it's not a picture one, it's just a simple question about the highway code. And for 2 points when it comes to marking, in what decade was the highway code first published? In what decade was the highway code first published? So 2 points for these bonus questions when it comes to marking. And that brings us back to the single point questions again. 1 point for the question 6. Again, simply name the road sign. Moving on, question 7. Again, simply name the road sign. Just 3 more to go in this week's picture round on road signs. And question 8, again, simply name the road sign. Two questions to go, and question 9, once again, just simply name what that road sign is. And that brings us to the question 10, the final question in the road signs round. Once again, what's that road sign? So after this, there'll be a minute's thinking time as well. So hopefully if you were unsure on any, you can either rewind your YouTube clip, I suppose, or if you're taking a snap on your phone or a screen grab. But we will have a minute's thinking time just at the end of this round, as for the other rounds. So that was the last question, question 10. So as I say, we'll have a minute's thinking time now just to get any answers you're unsure of, but also maybe you're unsure of either in the geography or the music rounds as well, because when we come back from that, we'll mark the first 3 rounds, get an idea of the scores at the halfway stage. Could be a total of 36 points available there, and then we'll have a 5-minute break just for you to go and stretch your legs, let the dog out, grab a bite to eat, grab a drink, whatever you need to do. And then we'll come back and do the final 2 rounds. And then during that 5-minute break, I'll also pop the live chat back on as well, so anyone can pop details of what scores they've had so far as well. As ever, any scores around about 25-30 after 3 rounds is a good score, so let's see if anyone's done as well as that this week. But for the moment, I'll pop a minute on the clock to finalise answers for those first 3 rounds. Minute on the clock. Okay, so that's the final minute's thinking time for the first 3 rounds. So hopefully you've got an answer in for everything, no blanks, as we're going to go through the answers now and mark the first 3 rounds. I'm not going to put the questions up, I'm just going to go quite quick fire through, so just mark it as you go along. As ever, if anyone's made any sort of spelling errors or anything like that, or anything grammatical, don't be too harsh on people. It is just for fun at the end of the day, so if it looks right, then it probably is right. But let's just go through and mark, and let's have an idea of how people have done at the halfway stage. So, first round was geography, and question 1, which US city is the home of the Motown Record Company? Well, that is Detroit. They're in Detroit, founded in 1959. Second question, which European city was called Christiania from 1624 to 1924? Well, that is the old name for Oslo. Oslo. Third question, Robert Mugabe was the first Prime Minister of which independent African country? That was Zimbabwe. That's Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. Question 4, on the banks of which river does Lisbon stand? Well, it stands on the Tagus River, which is 626 miles long. Question 5, Captain Cook discovered which island in the Pacific in 1777? Well, he discovered Christmas Island then, Christmas Island, and he names it because he discovered it on Christmas Day. Now, and the bonus question related to that for 2 points, which country is this island an external territory of? Well, it's an external territory of Australia. Australia is the answer there. 2 points for that bonus question if you got that. Back to the single point questions. Which South Asian country has a national holiday on May the 28th each year to celebrate its first nuclear test? That is Pakistan. Pakistan celebrates that. Question 7, again for 1 point. Angel Falls, the world's highest waterfall. Well, that's located in Venezuela. Venezuela. Question 8, what is the only country in the world with an AK-47 assault rifle depicted on its national flag? Well, that's one of those on the flag of Mozambique. Mozambique. They changed that flag since 1983. Question 9, again another flag one. Which 3 colours are on the Hungarian flag? Well, that is red, white and green. Red, white and green on the Hungarian flag. And then the last question in geography round, question 10, name the 2 US states named after King Charles I. I need both states for the point. Well, it's North and South Carolina. North Carolina and South Carolina. Named after Charles I, Latin Carolus. For Charles. So North and South Carolina. So 12 points available there in that round, including the bonus question, so keep an idea of that. Just keep tallying them up before we go to the break, but 12 points are available in that. Now we're going to music to mark as well. Question 1, in music, which band had albums entitled Complete Madness and Divine Madness? Well, that's just simply Madness. They had both those albums. Question 2, who was backed by the group The Blockheads? Well, that's the singer Ian Dury. Ian Dury, who passed away in 2000. Question 3, Penny Ford and Turbo B were vocalists with which 90s Eurodance group? They were members of Snap. Snap is the band we're looking for there. Question 4, which talent show judge managed Westlife? Well, that is the 67-year-old Louis Walsh. Louis Walsh. Question 5, which song has been a number 1 for both Tommy Rowe and for Vic Reeves? Well, that song is Dizzy. Dizzy is the song there. And the bonus question related to that for 2 points, Vic's 1991 version was recorded with which band? That band was The Wonder Stuff. The Wonder Stuff. 2 points if you got that. Question 6, though, back for the 1 point. Which country's jury memorably voted Neil Point to the Swedish Eurovision entry, which went on to win in 1974? Well, that was the UK who gave Neil Point to ABBA and Waterloo. Neil Point, the UK judge, gave no points at all. Question 7. Which English sir had the number 1s in both in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s? That is Sir Cliff Richard. Sir Cliff Richard. Question 8, which Meatloaf album from 1977 was released in 1991 and led to a 1993 sequel? That's simply Bat Out of Hell. Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf. Question 9, which band shares its name with a form for the unemployed? That is UB40. UB40 are named after a form for the unemployed. And the final question in the music round, question 10, which instrument did jazz legend Charlie Bird Parker play? That was the saxophone played by Charlie Bird Parker. So again, 12 points potential there in that round. Just add that to the first scores you had in the geography round. So possible total of 24 so far. 1 round to go we'll mark before we have a break. Like I say, a score of 25 plus, 25 up to 30. Very, very good indeed. Anything higher than that, very, very well done. But I'll pop the live chat on in a sec just so people can write their scores on. Now, round 3, that's the picture round, so I'll just go through these quickly as well. Hopefully you can remember what they were. And question 1, that was national speed limit applies. National speed limit applies. And again, like I say, the wording on this, if there's a lot of flexibility on this, so if you're close, you get the points, or if someone's very, very close and you're marking someone else's, let's just err on the side of fairness. But question 1, the national speed limit applies. Question 2, well, that's motor vehicles prohibited. Motor vehicles prohibited. Question 3, that's vehicles exceeding width of 2 metres or 6'6", prohibited. So that's the vehicles exceeding a width, prohibited. Question 4, the arrows one, was give way to oncoming vehicles. Give way to oncoming vehicles. Question 5, that's simply no waiting. No waiting, the blue circle with a red line through it. 1 point for that. And then there was a bonus question, again worth 2 points, now we're marking. And that was, what decade was the Highway Code first published? Well, it was first published in the 1930s, in 1931. So first published in the 1930s. 2 points if you got that one. Question 6, back to single points again for the road signs. Well, that's dual carriageway ends. Dual carriageway ends. 1 point for that. Question 7, that one was level crossing without barrier. Level crossing without barrier. But I think, just for fairness, I think if you just put level crossing, I know it's a different sign for level crossing as well, then maybe it's just worth 1 point. But it depends how strict if you're playing in teams, but the answer is level crossing without barrier. Question 8, the one with the 3 cars in a line and a triangle, that's just cues likely. Cues likely. Question 9, that's youth hostel. That's the sign for youth hostel. And then the final one, question 10, that was loose chippings. Loose chippings. So that brings us to the end of the first 3 rounds. So there's a total maybe there of 36 points available. What I'll do now is I'll put the live chat back on, and then we'll have a 5-minute break with a clock on screen, just so you can go and grab a drink, let the dog out, whatever you need to do, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes and do the remaining 2 rounds. But like I say, I'll pop the live chat on now just for 5 minutes to get an idea of what the scores are, and then we'll come back to those 2 rounds. Do put your scores on, 25, 30, would be a great score, be good to know what people have got. Okay, back in 5 minutes. Okay, so that's the 5-minute break over. Goes quite quickly as well, but hopefully you've all managed to do what you need to do. And I'll come back and have a final 2 rounds. I've disabled the live chat again just for the moment, so people can't put any answers on or anything like that, but I will put it on at the end for people to put final scores on. Seems to be some good scores at the halfway stage as well, heading towards potentially more than 50 points in the across the 5 rounds, but we'll see. So without further ado, I think we'll just go back to the main quiz. And round 4 this week is famous firsts. Famous firsts. And the first question, for 1 point again, these ones. Who was the first recorded person to swim the English Channel without the use of artificial aids? Who was the first recorded person to swim the English Channel without the use of artificial aids? And again, as ever, there will be a minute's thinking time at the end of these rounds. If you're unsure on any, do pop a note just on the side of your paper. But we'll try and go along at a good speed as well, just to try and keep it all within the hour. So, question 2 in Famous Firsts. Who was the first billion-dollar author, earning $1 billion US, or currency equivalent, from their books and related merchandise? Who was the first billion-dollar author, earning $1 billion US from their books and related merchandise? And if you're unsure about any of these, just jot a note down, but we'll speed on quite quickly to question 3 in the Famous Firsts round. Who was the first female to complete a solo transatlantic flight, journeying from Newfoundland to Ireland in 1932? Who was the first female to complete a solo transatlantic flight, journeying from Newfoundland to Ireland in 1932? Takes us on to question 4 in round 4. Who became the first female Prime Minister of Pakistan in 1988, and hence the first female Prime Minister of a Muslim country? Who became the first female Prime Minister of Pakistan in 1988, and hence the first female Prime Minister of a Muslim country? And that takes us on to question 5. What was Cliff Richard's first UK #1 single? What was Cliff Richard's first UK #1 single? One point for that question, but then we come to the bonus question, which is related to that in some way. The bonus question for the Famous Firsts round is, what decade was this song #1? In what decade was this song #1? So the question related to the question in question 5, Cliff Richard's first UK #1 single. For 2 points, what decade was this song #1? And back to the single point questions again. Question 6 for 1 point. Which UK girl band launched the new UK Channel 5 at 6 p.m. on March the 30th, 1997? Which UK girl band launched the new UK Channel 5 at 6 p.m. on March the 30th, 1997? Again, if you're unsure of any of these, do write a little note on the side of your answer sheets. There will be a minute's thinking time again at the end of this round. But we'll go on to question 7 in round 4. Who was the first person to own a Facebook account? Who was the first person to own a Facebook account? Just 1 point for these questions, but we'll move on. Question 8. In which country did the first ever Football World Cup take place? In July 1930. In which country did the first ever Football World Cup take place? In July 1930. Two questions to go in the famous first round. Question 9 is, Valentina Tereshkova is famous for achieving what famous first? Valentina Tereshkova is famous for achieving what famous first? And that brings us to the last question in the famous first round. In 2008, who became the first man to win 8 gold medals at a single modern Olympic Games? In 2008, who became the first man to win 8 gold medals at a single modern Olympic Games? So that takes us to the end of round 4. As with the previous rounds now, we'll have a minute's thinking time just before we go into round 5, the fifth and final round. So a minute on the clock now just to get any answers you're unsure of for the famous first round. A minute on the clock. Okay, so that's that minute's thinking time done for the famous first round. Which brings us nicely on to the fifth round and final round this week, which as ever is general knowledge. So 10 more questions and a bonus to go, and then we'll mark the rounds and see how we got on. But on to question 1 in general knowledge, and that is, which city is home to Michelangelo's masterpiece, David? Which city is home to Michelangelo's masterpiece, David? And as ever at the end of this round, there'll be a minute's thinking time as well, to give you time to finalise answers both for this round and also for the famous first round before we go into final marking. But moving on, question 2 in general knowledge. In Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, what was the last thing Mr. Creosote ate? In Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, what was the last thing Mr. Creosote ate? And moving on to question 3. Si and Am are the two mischievous Siamese cats in which Disney classic? Si and Am are the two mischievous Siamese cats in which Disney classic? Moving along to try and keep within the hour, question 4 in general knowledge. Which military leader had a horse called Bucephalus? Which military leader had a horse called Bucephalus? Takes us on to question 5 in the general knowledge round, and that is, which sport does James Bond take part in Die Another Day? Which sport does James Bond take part in Die Another Day? So 1 point for that, question 5, but then we have the bonus question for 2 points related in some way to question 5. And the bonus question for this round is, who played James Bond in that film? Who played James Bond in this film, Die Another Day? 2 points for that when it comes to marking. So moving back to the single point questions, question 6 in general knowledge is, Kiss Me Kate is a musical version of which play by Shakespeare? Kiss Me Kate is a musical version of which play by Shakespeare? Just 4 more questions to go. Question 7 in general knowledge is, how is the number 77 represented in Roman numerals? How is the number 77 represented in Roman numerals? Question 8. Moving anti-clockwise on a dartboard, what is the number next to 4? Moving anti-clockwise on a dartboard, what is the number next to 4? Just 2 questions to go in the round and the quiz. Question 9 in general knowledge is, how many dots are used in each letter in the Braille system? How many dots are used in each letter in the Braille system? And just for clarity, that's the maximum number of dots that make up each character. Obviously there's different dot configurations, but what's the maximum? How many dots are used in each letter? And that takes us nicely to the final question in the round and the final question in this week's quiz. Which 2 temperamental and disagreeable old men who appear in The Muppets are named after 2 famous New York City hotels? Which 2 temperamental and disagreeable old men who appear in The Muppets are named after 2 famous New York City hotels? So that brings us to the end of round 5 and also brings it to the end of the quiz. So just before we do the final marking, we'll have a minute's thinking time just to finalise any of the answers you're unsure of, both on the general knowledge round and the famous firsts round, and then we'll come back and mark those final 2 rounds. After that, I'll leave the live chat open for a few minutes. If you want to pop in your scores or any comments, that'd be great. But for the moment, we'll just have a minute on the clock to finalise your answers before final marking. Minute on the clock, starting now. Okay, so that's a final minute's thinking time over for those last 2 rounds. Hopefully you've got an answer in for everything, no blanks on your quiz sheet. So as before, we'll just go straight through and mark them all straight away. So round 4 was the famous first round. Question 1, who was the first recorded person to swim the English Channel without the use of artificial aids? That was Captain Matthew Webb. Captain Matthew Webb, back in 1875. Question 2, who was the first billion-dollar author earning $1 billion US or more from their books and related merchandising? Well, that was J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling. Question 3, who was the first female to complete a solo transatlantic flight in 1932? That was Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart. Question 4, who became the first female Prime Minister of Pakistan in 1988? That was Benazir Bhutto. Benazir Bhutto back then, and she was assassinated in December 2007. Question 5, what was Cliff Richard's first UK #1 single? That was Living Doll. That was his first #1, Living Doll. And the bonus question for 2 points related to that, what decade was this song #1? Well, it was #1 in July 1959. 59, so it was in the 1950s he had his first #1. Question 6, back to the single point ones as well. Which UK girl band launched a new UK Channel 5 in 1997? Well, that was the Spice Girls who launched that. Spice Girls. The first programme shown was their soap, Family Affairs. Question 7, again for 1 point. Who was the first person to own a Facebook account? Well, that was no surprise. That's Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg. Question 8, in which country did the first ever Football World Cup take place? In July 1930. Well, with just 13 teams, that took place in Uruguay. It took place in Uruguay, who went on to win the final that time as well. Question 9, Valentina Tereshkova is famous for achieving what first? Well, she was the first woman in space. First woman in space, back in June 1963. And then question 10, in 2008, who became the first man to win 8 gold medals at a single modern Olympic Games? Well, that's the swimmer Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps. So again, 12 points available in that round. If you want to just take a note of that and add it to your scores from the first 3 rounds and get a running total. Still got 1 more round to mark, the final general knowledge round. In general knowledge, question 1, which city is home to Michelangelo's masterpiece David? Well, that currently resides in Florence. In Florence. Question 2, in Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, what was the last thing Mr. Creosote ate? Well, it was a wafer thin mint, a wafer thin mint. And after dinner mint, a wafer thin mint. If you're close to that, then that will do. Question 3. Si and Am are the 2 mischievous cats in which Disney classic? That is the 1955 Lady and the Tramp. Lady and the Tramp. Question 4. Which military leader had a horse called Bucephalus? Well, that was Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great. Question 5. Which sport does James Bond take part in Die Another Day? Well, he takes part in fencing. In fencing. 1 point for that. The bonus question related to that, round 5's bonus question, who played James Bond in this film? That was Pierce Brosnan, who fenced in Die Another Day, and with Madonna as the fencing coach in that film. 2 points if you got the bonus one for Pierce Brosnan. Question 6, Kiss Me Kate is a musical version of which play by Shakespeare? Well, that's a version of The Taming of the Shrew. The Taming of the Shrew. Question 7, how is the number 77 represented in Roman numerals? Well, that's represented as LXXV11. LXXV11. 77. Question 8, moving anti-clockwise on a dartboard, what is the number next to 4? Well, the number anti-clockwise is 18. 18 is the answer there. Question 9, how many dots are used to make up each letter in the Braille system? Well, they are made up of 6 dots. 6 dots. Question 10, final question in the round and the quiz. Which 2 temperamental and disagreeable old men in the Muppets are named after 2 famous New York City hotels? Well, that is the 2 old guys named Statler and Waldorf. Statler and Waldorf. So that's the final answer there for the general knowledge round. So, there we go then. That's the 5 rounds all completed, 12 points for each round, so you should have a total of possible 60 points. But if you want, I'll put the live chat in the live in a second, leave it on for about 5 minutes or so, just to write your scores down, see who's done well, see who's won. But at the end of the day, remember, it is just for fun. If you want to follow me, then do subscribe here, or have a look for me on Twitter and things. Usually the quiz is on a Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, and we'll be again next week for week 14 of lockdown. But for the moment, like I say, I'll leave the live chat on, and look forward to seeing your comments, and I'll see you next Tuesday.